Well, what's up, TC? How you feeling? If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name's Justin Chandler. I'm one of the pastors here at The Crossing. So glad that you're joining us for our weekend service today. And I would love to just continue on in our series, Lemons to Lemonade. See, one of the things that we've recognized is regardless of how you're viewing the service, like there's been some lemons that have been thrown out this year. It's been a weird year in 2020, like starting from January and some of the events that have happened there, continuing all until now and some of the news of this week. And in fact, online, one of the things I've been seeing pop up on Instagram and Facebook is this meme taken from Back to the Future where Doc says to Marty, whatever happens, don't ever go to 2020. And when you and I look at this year, or even the years that we've been a part of, odds are you would say, if I could just take a skip, or if we could just reroute to 2021, some of us would elect to say yes to that because a lot of what's happened throughout this year has impacted every aspect of our lives. And one of the ways that we've been impacted is through our work. I know some of you, just by me saying that, you're like, I'm out, like I'm gonna go watch something else, like hang with me just for a little bit. Here's one of the things that's true, regardless of how you're viewing today's service. You know, some of you have lost your job. Some of you your job hasn't changed. Some of you have been disrupted by working at home. For some of you, you get to keep working as usual. Some of you have seen your hours and your salary reduced. Some of you have seen it increased. Some of you have lost your companies. Some of you have started companies. Some of you are having the worst professional year of your life. And for some of you, this is the absolute best. And when it comes to our work, we're all over the place. But not only that, we approach the idea of work from all over the place. And so just to give us a framework of where I'm talking today, I'd love just a couple of definitions to begin. Here's the very first one. Like when I talk about work or job, here's what I mean. It's getting paid primarily for your time rather than your skills. Right? This is the epitome of you punching the ticket. And so when we start to say things like, I'm going to my work or my job, like we're usually saying like, this just feels like time for me, time being spent. And so that's what work and job is. The second one would be career. And in a career, it's a much higher commitment of your time, a higher commitment of education and training. And as we progress in our career, it will lead to more compensation. At least that's our thought behind it. And so a work and career can be really similar, but we've kind of made a living in the career sense of our job. And then the very last one is vocation. And vocation is the activities that bring you immense satisfaction. And those may not be mutually exclusive, right? But often with vocation, we'll work or we'll pursue a career so that we can do the things that we love, right? And so you may not be getting paid for these things that bring you immense satisfaction, but you'll set up your life around doing them in hopes that you'll be able to have more time for it. And this is the very same conversation that I was having with my best friends this week, that as we just were kind of started talking about how our weeks were going, it began just talking about our job and kind of highlighting some of the things that we were doing. And then really quickly, it shifted to our career and kind of why we stepped into the things that we were doing and kind of how we've navigated that because some has changed over the years. And then as we started talking about that, we found that there were times where some were in what they loved, like the career that they were doing was the thing that brought them immense satisfaction. And there were others who were saying like, I don't love my job, I don't love what I do, but I love what it provides for my family, or I love the opportunities that it gives me. And so I'll keep doing that work so I can have these other things. And as true as that was for my friends and I, the very same thing is true for you. Some of you are working jobs and in careers that you absolutely love. It brings you immense satisfaction. And some of you are punching the ticket in hopes that you'll be able to do the things that you love, or it'll provide for your families in ways that you love. And knowing as we enter into a conversation about work that we're across the spectrum and experience, we're across the spectrum and how we're approaching it, what I wanted to do is just kind of highlight what the next couple of minutes of our time is going to look like. And so in the beginning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these three words. And as we talk about those three words, they're going to give us kind of a framework of how we can approach why we're on the planet and why we do what we do. And then from that, we're going to have a chance to look at one single verse. And in looking at that single verse, it's going to give us a chance to apply not only where we find ourselves contextually in the time and what we're experiencing, but how to make sense of us going forward in light of that. And at the end of our service today, we're going to have a chance to have just a response time, both in a song and for us to respond personally as we kind of go through our service today. And so here's what I'd love for you to do. If you have a Bible, you can open up to 2 Timothy chapter 4. We're going to be in verse 5. That's our one verse today. If you don't have a Bible, you can download our app. It's available on the App Store and Google Play. It's a great place for you to download it. And in there, as you download the app, when you push the home button, you can scroll down. There's a little thing that says notes. And once you click on that and click on this weekend, all the content we'll be sharing this weekend will be available there, and you'll have a chance to take some additional notes. And so as you're doing that, I want to start with a question. All right, so as you're getting there in your Bible, as you're getting there in the app, I want to start with a question. And it's a question that you and I would have just as we're getting to know each other, right? So even as we're doing this online, I'd love for you to participate in it. If we were to meet each other for the very first time, whether it was in a neighborhood or maybe we met at a coffee shop, as we started having a conversation, eventually we would come to this question: what do you do? And that would be a way for you and I to talk about our work or our job, our career, whatever's bringing us our passion. But when you answer the question, what do you do? How do you answer it? And I'd love for you to include that in the comments right now. So go ahead and jump in, answer the question, what do you do? Right? So just go ahead and fill that out right now. We'll have a chance to see what everyone does. And for me, when I answer that question, both in my neighborhood and as I would answer it to you, I would say, hey, I'm a pastor at the Crossing Church in Costa Mesa. If you were looking for it, it's right off the 55 in Newport and at Victoria. And if someone's lived in this area long enough, they'd say, oh, I know the Crossing. Like, I drive by that a bunch of times on the way to the beach, or I drive there on the way to work or coming back from work. I know exactly where your church is. And they may point to a series that they had heard of, event they participated in, or they'd say, oh, I buy stuff from Armstrong Gardens all the time, so I'm at your church constantly. So that would be a way for us to talk about that. And as I'm having that conversation with someone in my neighborhood, or I'd be having it with you, I'm genuinely interested in what people do. I love both what they do and where they do it. And so I'd love to hear from you. And even as this service continues, you'll see me jump back in. I'll reply to your comment just for us to start talking about, what do you do? And I know some of you have already said, like, I'm not making comments. Maybe you turned it off, or maybe you're watching on a TV. Grab another device, jump in, just throw it in. This is a great time for you to give your first comment, but jump in and say, what do you do? And in the notes portion, this is kind of where we're going to take. Here's what we do. This is where we're starting from. And I just want to give you these 3 words that I was talking about, right? Some of the framework that'll progress. Here are the 3 words. We'll throw them up on the screen for you. It's this: gift, call, and flavor. Gift, call, flavor. These are going to pop up throughout our time together, so don't feel the pressure to write them down immediately. But we're going to start with the word gift. And when I mean gift, here's what I mean by that. Every person, when they are born, is uniquely gifted simply by being born. That by entering on the planet, there's certain things that you're good about, that you're passionate about, that you care about, and they weren't necessarily developed by you, that they just feel like they've always been there from the beginning. And that may go its way towards talent, that may go its ways towards a specific skill that you have. And one of the examples that I like to share is of Shaquille O'Neal, who's better known as Shaq. He's a 17 or 19-year NBA player, 15-time All-Star. He's most known for being a center for the Orlando Magic. And one of the highlights of his career was defeating Michael Jordan and the Bulls when Jordan came back after retirement. So if you've been watching The Last Dance on ESPN or Netflix, you know exactly what's up. Shaq, one of the greatest Orlando Magic players of all time. And so when you see Shaq, he's 7 feet 1 inch tall, and he's 325 pounds. He's one of the tallest and heaviest men to ever play the game of basketball, and he's widely considered to be the most dominant player to ever play. And I don't want to downplay the effort. I don't want to downplay the hard work that Shaq put in. But the question would be, what did Shaq do to be born 7 feet 1 inches tall? Like, what did he do to make that happen? And the answer is nothing. Like, he was just born. You can't eat more vegetables, drink more milk, or take more vitamins to get there. Like, that's just there by being born. Now, did Shaq work hard to make the best of that? Absolutely. Did he put in effort? You better believe it. He probably could have put more effort into shooting free throws, right? All the Lakers fans agree. But this would be one of those moments where Shaq recognized he was uniquely gifted and did something with that. And the same is true for him. We could look through every sector of our society and say, man, that person is gifted. Like, there's something about the way they do that that's just special. It's true in every sector, and it's true for every person. Every person who's ever been born is gifted. And at The Crossing, we care a lot about helping people discover that. And so we lead through this guided 4-part process called Growth Track. And in Growth Track, we have 4 steps that it leads to. The very first step is called Explore. And we have a chance to look at the history of our church, but also why church? Why Christianity? Like, why all of these things that you may be exploring? And so that's the very first part in Explore. The second part, we talk about connecting here. Like, how do you have strong, meaningful relationships at the Crossing, even in an online environment? The third thing we do is talk through growth. And how do we as people grow in our unique wiring and gifting? And then in the fourth part, we have is called Engage. And how do we use our one and only life to make a difference? And if you're new to the Crossing, if you're exploring faith, man, this is one of the best ways for you to take some steps with us. And we're actually starting a new session of Growth Track this month. And so if you'd like to be a part of that, we'll have a digital version of that available for you. Just send an email to info@thecrossing.com. We'll send you all the info for you to be a part of that. And in the Grow section of Growth Track, we highlight these 2 personality profiles, a way for you to discover your unique wiring and your unique gifting. And so the very first one is called the DISC assessment. And it's the most popular personality profile every year. It's taken millions of times, both personally and professionally. And a part of the DISC assessment is to discover your wiring. And so we actually have a free one that's available for you now, that as you're watching online in the comments, you'll see a link pop up. All you got to do is click on that link. It'll redirect you to our website, and you'll have a chance to take that assessment. You'll answer just a few really simple questions, and at the end of it, you'll discover strengths, weaknesses, motivations, the things that are true for you as a leader, what would be true for you as you work on a team, and all of that will help you to see and to make some sense of who you are and how you're gifted. And then one of the other assessments we give is called a spiritual gifts test. And the reason we give that is that as Christians, we believe that God has uniquely wired each one of us. That the reason we are the way that we are is God made us that way. And then rather than us wondering, like, what am I supposed to do with that? In the Bible are these ways where God highlights, hey, here's how this person has been gifted. Here's how I've uniquely made them. And so the spiritual gifts test is a way to take the DISC assessment and to say, what could God do with that? And so in the very same way, you'll see a link pop up in the comments right now. As you click on that link, it'll redirect you. You'll take the spiritual gifts test. And then from that, you'll see how you're uniquely gifted and how God has uniquely wired you. And as we start to make sense of, okay, here's who I am and here's how I'm gifted, we then take that to the next word, which is call. And here's what I mean by call. Like, call is our recognition that there's something that's going to be made of our lives on the planet simply by how we're wired and how we're gifted, right? It's us walking in the purpose that we have. And again, we see this across every sector of society, and it's not just true of faith, right? Like Steve Jobs wanted to get 1,000 songs in your pocket, which is why he developed the iPod. We have this moment where JFK wanted to see people on the moon by the end of the decade. William Wilberforce wanted to abolish the slave trade. There's these people who recognize there's this special way that I've been made, and there's a purpose for that in my life. And so I want to start to walk in this purpose. And if you follow Jesus, again, recognizing that he's intimately made you and wired you, then it would make sense that God made you in that way for some purpose on the planet to achieve some good, that unique wiring has something to fulfill. And early on in my time in church, I was a bit discouraged by this because anytime someone would talk about call, they would talk about things like this. Someone standing on stage with a microphone, right? It could be a speaker, it could be a musician, it could be a vocalist, but that's often the way that call was framed for me. And then I had a mentor of mine who kind of pointed me to a different section of the Bible. It's close to what we were reading in our last series, OMG. And here's what it says. Exodus 31. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'See, I've chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom and with understanding, with knowledge and with all kinds of skill, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I have appointed Aholiab, son of Ahimelech, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you.'" And this was revolutionary for me in the moment I heard it, because I didn't have a desire to do this at any point in my life. The only thing I wanted to do was to be a pilot. And if we start talking about call, like, I asked the question, like, what's God going to do with a pilot? He only calls people to do these other things. And yet from this little section, I started to see that God gave wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and skill to people in all sectors of society, for artistic designs, for people who worked with wood, for people who laid stone, for people who cut gems, for people who worked with clothing and made garments. Like each one of them, God uniquely gifted, and he gave skill and a call to say, here's why I've put you there. And as true as it was for them, the same is true for you and I. And when we look at this section, like the highlight of Exodus is this person named Moses. And yet right here in Exodus 31, we can read, hey, you may not be Moses, but you have a purpose. Like you may not have that call, but there's something that God wants to do through your life because of how you're gifted. And we'll have a chance to cover a little bit more on that later. And so as we step into our unique wiring, as we step into our unique gifting, we find that there's a purpose that's behind that, and it's going to impact, it's going to make good of the planet, but it's going to touch our family, our friends, our coworkers, and neighbors. And so you don't need to go find something new to do. You don't need to go pursue some new passion. Instead, you get to walk in the fullness of who you are, which brings us to the last portion of those three words, which is this, flavor. And I know that's a weird word to end on, right? You've got gift, call, and then flavor may sound a bit odd. But with all the unique wiring, with all of the unique gifting, there's going to come times where that overlaps. And we'll find people who are both gifted and called in really similar ways. And so if we point back to Shaq as an example, there's a lot of players in the NBA who were taller than 7 feet. There's a lot of centers. There's a lot of big men in the NBA. In fact, right now, there's 11% of players in the NBA who are over 7 feet tall. But here's the truth about each one of them. They all approach the game of basketball differently. They all have different skill levels. They all have different ways that they play the very same game. And as true as that is in basketball, it's true in other sectors too. You can take our teaching team as an example. Each one of us is gifted. Each one of us is called to speak in this way, and yet each one of us brings a different flavor, and it's better for the result. And the same is true in Lemonade, in this series that we've been a part of. Making lemonade is the same exact process. Water, sugar, and lemons. And yet, there's a style of lemonade that you prefer. And so I've brought the two heavyweights of the lemonade industry with me here today. You've got Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's. And I know already some of you have a preference. There's one that you love most. And so I'd love for you in the comments right now just to answer, which one do you love the most? Do you like Chick-fil-A or do you like Cane's? Which lemonade is better? And to whoever gets the most likes on their comment, I'll send you a gift card to the one that you love the most, and you'll have a chance to get some more lemonade. But Chick-fil-A or Cane's, go ahead and recruit your friends. You can win Chick-fil-A or Cane's. Which one do you prefer? And if you take what I do, right, there's a lot of pastors. There's a lot of people who are going to step into this. And what I'm not trying to do is to do it the way that they do it or to follow that style. Like I've got a unique way that I'm going to walk in my gifting, and you've got a unique way that you walk in yours. And so here's the one verse for us, the one verse that we're going to look at this weekend. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 5. And here's what it says. But you keep your head in all situations. Endure hardship. Do the work of an evangelist. Discharge all the duties of your ministry. And that last line is a little bit different for me than the way I heard it, the way I memorized it. So we're just going to sub it in. You'll see it there. Here's the last part. Fulfill your ministry. That's the way I heard it. Fulfill your ministry. So keep your head in all situations. Endure hardships. Do the work of an evangelist. Fulfill your ministry. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know how you're processing this weekend, but I need each and every one of these statements. So we'll just start at the top. Keep your head in all situations. And as we've looked at this year, there's a lot that would cause our heads to spin. There's a lot going on in our state. There's a lot going on in our city. There's a lot going on around the world. And there's been events throughout each month that have caused our head to spin. And at times we can run to different places for answers, or we can have different reactions. And some of you may feel like right now your head is still spinning. And so the encouragement of the Bible right here is to keep your head in all situations. Like, don't lose sight of the end because of what you're caught up right now. Like, don't lose your way because of something that's happening to you. That if we're trusting God and if we're believing that God is doing something good in this world, then surely God is going to lead us to that good no matter what is happening to us. And so there's a way for us to keep our head in all situations, right? To stay focused and to dig in. The second thing that we can see is that we endure hardship. That there's going to be hard things that happen in life. There's going to be difficult roads that we have to take. And a lot of that is just by being on the planet. Hard stuff happens. And with life, and in the same thing of today, like today's not a sprint, like we're making it to the end of today. We want to make it to the end of our lives. And so it's not us just trying to run as hard as possible or trying to make it to the next thing, but we recognize that we're in a marathon. And it's us making it one more step. And I know some of you who are tuning in right now, the very reason you're tuning in is because you're just trying to take one more step. You need just a little bit more support. You need just a little bit more wind in the sails to take that next step. But for every one of us to say, we're going to face hardship, so endure. The third thing that we do is we do the work of an evangelist. An evangelist will get associated with church or with a church role, but here's the reality of it. An evangelist is somebody who tells good news. And whether you're a person of faith or not, there's good news still being told on the planet. There's good news that can still be shared. We don't have to look hard to find bad news, but instead we want to be the people who bring good news. We believe that so much that a couple of months ago we led through a series called Tell Me Something Good, because we believe that there was enough bad news going on in the planet that we just needed to bring more good news. And it was true then, and it's true now. There's good news to be shared. And you can tell the good news of even things that are happening at our church. The good news of homeless teens being fed. The good news of refugees being given necessary supplies. The good news of kids, students, and adults being baptized and stepping into brand new life. The good news of hundreds of thousands of dollars being distributed to people in need. The good news of millions of tons of food being distributed as well. There's plenty of good news. So do the work of telling good news. Find ways to make good news known. And even one simple way that you'll hear us say each and every weekend, that even just by liking and sharing this video, you're telling people, hey, here's some good news, that you could even do it right now. Some instructions will pop up on the screen. That just by doing that, you're telling your family and your friends, to people connected with you, this is some good news that you could hear today. And so you could even do that at this moment. And as we go through these self-discovery tools, as we walk in our gifting and calling, man, all of that is good news. But I got to tell you, the best news ever is the news of Jesus. That God loved us so much that he came onto the planet, that he lived and he died and he came back alive for every one of us to walk in new life. That's the best news that could ever be told. And we want to do the good work. We want to do the work of an evangelist and telling that good news too. And then the very last one is to fulfill your ministry. See, Paul, the author of this letter, he wrote it to Timothy, and this was the second letter that he had written to him. And as he was writing this letter, he was talking specifically to Timothy, but Paul traveled with a number of people. And so here's just a few of the companions, the people who traveled the world with Paul as he was telling the good news of Jesus. You've got Timothy, Titus, John Mark, Tysius, Onesimus, Epaphras, Jason, Silas, Aristarchus, Gaius, Trophimus, Barnabas, and Justus, just to name a few. And when Paul started writing to Timothy, he didn't say to him, hey, I want you to fulfill what one of these other guys are doing. Right? I want you to do what Titus is doing, or you should do more of what Silas is doing. No, he looked at Timothy and he said, fulfill your ministry. And even what Timothy was being asked to do wasn't the same thing that Paul was being asked to do, that there was a specific purpose to Timothy's life, and Paul wanted him to fulfill that. The same was true for Timothy. The same is true for me, and the same is true for you. Right? That the goal of this wouldn't be for you to fulfill or to be more like Justin Chandler. Like one is more than enough for the whole planet, right? So don't try to emulate or to be like me, but instead to walk fully into who you are, to be the greatest and most refined version of yourself. The world's a boring place if we all start having the same flavor, if we all start bringing the same thing to the table. But instead, it's more diverse, it's more beautiful, it's more fun. There's more life when each of us brings our flavor. And here's what I got to tell you. The world needs your flavor. Your family, friends, and neighbors need your flavor. This church, the Crossing Church, needs your flavor. For you to recognize that you're uniquely gifted by God simply by being born. And because of that unique gifting, you have a calling on your life to make good in the world. And the way that you make good of that gifting and calling in the world is going to be different than other people. And you're going to bring your unique flavor to the planet. And that you're going to fulfill your ministry. Not mine, not theirs, not in competition with somebody else. You're going to fulfill yours. And as we come to the end of our time together here, we're going to have a chance for each of us to respond, both in this moment and in a song right after this. And so here's what I'd love for us to do, even as we're watching online. I'd love for each of you to process one of these three responses that will be coming up on the screen. For some of you, as you're watching today, like you're exploring faith, and it's part of why you tuned in today, that maybe you're one of those people who saw it shared by a friend and you're watching the good news now. And maybe there's just something that's happening in your life and in your heart that you've never known Jesus before, you haven't had an experience with Jesus before, but you feel like that may be happening now. Or there's some of you who the whole reason you're tuning in is because you've run out of options, you don't know where else to go, and so you're making a return to faith today. And so we're going to give you a chance to say yes to, hey, I want a relationship with Jesus today. I want to walk in that. To some of you, you're saying like, I want to know my giftings. I want to know my calling. I want to walk in this unique flair. I want to make good of my life. I want to make a difference, which is a word you'll hear us say here. And we're going to give you a chance to say yes to that also. And for some of you, as we brought up the topic of work, like this is the most difficult season you're walking through right now. This is the way you find yourself going through hard times. And we're going to have a chance to support you and pray with you and be with you in that. And so here's what I'm going to do, even as we're watching online together. I'd love for you to be a part of this in the comments. And so if you're saying yes to Jesus today, right, for the very first time, or maybe you're making a comeback to faith, all you got to do is use the hand waving emoji, right? You can type the number 1 or you can say Jesus. Any of those will work. And we're going to take some time to pray with you today. So if that's you, go ahead and wave the emoji, type the number 1 or say Jesus. All those will work, but we want you to jump into the comments, say yes to that. We'd love to be able to pray with you. For some of you, as you're walking into that gift, call, and flavor, you want to know how your one and only life can make a difference today. So all you got to do is type number 2. You could type make a difference. Either of those will work, but wave your hand, and we want to be able to pray for you as well. If you're saying, hey, I want my life to do that. I want my life to make a difference. Go ahead and type number 2 or make a difference. Those will be great. And then to the third group of people, if you're struggling in your season at work, your job, your career, but this has been a hard season for you, and you're saying like, hey, I could really use prayer in this area, go ahead and raise your hand. You can wave it there. Type the number 3 or work. Either of those are good for us, and we're going to jump in and be able to pray with you. All right, so as you're typing that in, whichever way you want to respond today, go ahead and type that in, and then we're going to pray together. So Jesus, I thank you so much, and I'm so thankful, God, that you came onto this planet, and that, God, you gave your life for each and every one of us so that we could walk in a brand new life. And some of us, God, are stepping into that for the very first time, that we're saying yes to you. And so, God, to those who are raising their hand and saying, I want to say yes to Jesus, God, I pray wherever they're viewing this from, that the very love of God that came onto the planet for their lives would be the very love of God that's meeting them right now. And God, as they're waving their hand, that they're stepping into thousands of years of people having said yes to Jesus and the difference that you've made in their life. And so we pray that they would walk in that brand new life as well. God, to those who are walking in their gift, call, and flavor, and they want to make a difference with their lives, God, would you show the unique wiring, gifting, and purpose that you put them on the planet for? And God, would their one and only life make a difference with their friends and their family, their coworkers, and their neighbors? And God, to the last group of people, if work has been a struggle, God, I pray that as they lift their hands, that they're finding they're not standing alone, but that, God, this community of people is rallying around them, both by our prayers and our support, that, God, they're not walking by themselves, and that, God, that they'd be able to endure this hardship as well. And so, God, I pray today that as we continue on in our service and we have a chance to respond in song, that, God, we'll see that you're meeting us there as well. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So over the next couple of minutes, our band's going to lead us through this song called Falling Into You, and it's going to be a chance for us to respond in that very same way, that this is a moment of us trusting in Jesus, and it's the best response that we could have now. So stay with us for the next couple of minutes and sing along.